Students of Reddit, what is something your teacher did that really upset the whole class? I had a college professor who was teaching a history course to a bunch of education majors in their junior year. She would ask us questions all the time about things she hadn't yet lectured on, and then pull the, "Really? No one knows the answer to this? Well, I guess we'll wait for someone to answer." We were all education majors, we knew that trick. We waited her out every single time, she always broke first. Edit. People keep asking, what's the trick? This was a poorly executed attempt at using the Socratic method. It's better to have students arrive at an answer themselves than it is to tell them. However, you have to first create an environment of trust and respect so that students are comfortable enough to risk a wrong answer, and you have to be willing to provide a little bit of scaffolding should no one know. This professor did neither. Story 2. Pretty standard teacher stuff, keeping the whole class in at lunch for something one person had done. It was the fact that the school had very clear behavior/punishment policies that teachers and pupils alike understood that upset us, because she blatantly broke them just to prove a point. Edit. To explain what happened in more detail since folks have questions, someone's phone went off in class. At that school at that time, that meant having your phone taken away from you and getting it back at the end of the day. Fair enough. The person whose phone it was refused to admit it was them, though. This upset the class to begin with. Then the teacher said we would all have to come back at lunch. The lesson was after break, so we had another lesson before lunch if I recall. And if we didn't, we would have an hour's detention after school. Being a goody-goody, I didn't want an hour's detention on my record, so I turned up. But did at least start eating my packed lunch and dared her to tell me not to. I'd like to know if she ever chased up the people who didn't turn up. Story 3. My German teacher would make you retake spelling tests until you got 100%. Once you did, you could sit and do whatever you like until the whole class got 100%. This caused a lot of pressure on everyone, as he used to belittle the students who didn't pass the first or second time. If you were the only one left, he would stand over you and watch you struggle. One test day, I decided to bunk off and I got caught. I burst into tears and explained how horrible this teacher was and that I'm never going back into his class. I was moved into a higher set German class with an amazing teacher, and my German improved. Okay, but if this isn't the most German teaching method I could think of, I don't know what is. I don't know how to explain it. It just has German vibes, if that makes sense. Story 4. Post-English class. Break starts. I remain at my desk and do the homework the teacher assigned. Break ends. Teacher comes back. Sees I've done the homework already. She waits for the whole class to come back and then shouts, "Since OP has already done the homework, you all get 2 extra pages." Needless to say, that did not improve my bullying situation. Story 5. This was second year, 12th grade in school. My teacher, unable to manage 20 of these rowdy kids, is pretty enraged by the end of the class. She has a thing about counting every piece of equipment after class, and she begins to count the Newton meters. Now, if you don't know what these are, they are literally a metal spring with plastic around it that measures how much an item weighs. This teacher counted 19 when there were definitely 20. So she holds us back from lunch. She brings the faculty head in and we get a bollocking from her. "Cannot steal from the school, unjust, yada yada." If we were rowdy before, we are raging now. And she requests the least well-behaved kids to open their bags. Of course, these kids are protesting, but the teacher offers detention if they don't comply. So after rummaging through a bunch of pubescent kids' bags and finding nothing, she finally goes back to her desk to find the Newton meter sitting behind her world's best teacher mug. Look on her face? Priceless. Story 6. Head teacher of my high school tried to expel me for having an epileptic seizure in front of him. Said I was a danger and distraction to other pupils and was disrupting his school. I ended up being kept out of school for 2 months while my parents fought my case. In that time, almost all of the rest of the teaching staff who were furious with this decision kept me supplied with work, and even one-on-one tutoring when needed. This was in a rural area where the next nearest school was 40 miles away, so we had no other school choice. This is insanity from a teacher. I can't even imagine this. So having a seizure in front of him made you a danger. That's a new one. Haven't heard that before. Story 7. We were about 10 or 11 years old. It was the last period of the day and the music teacher was subbing our science class. He was sitting on the computer and we were all getting on with work. Towards the end of our period, our homeroom teacher comes into the classroom and exclaims, "It's the end of the day. Why are you not all packed up?" To which the music teacher replied, "I told them and they refused to." Excuse you? He hadn't said a thing to us, so we all protested. Even so, our homeroom teacher told us off for being disobedient, as the music teacher slithered out of the room and we had to stay 10 minutes late as punishment. Lying snake. Story 8. At university, my professor did not tell us the time of our examination, despite numerous emails from 20-odd students, as well as the head professor of the course. This exam could have been any time from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and I lived 90 minutes from campus and relied on crap public transport to get into uni. It got to 9 p.m. the day before. No one knew when the exam would be, and if we missed it, we would fail the whole module. So I took the train to the city where my uni is, booked a cheap, crappy hotel room for the night just to make sure I was there on time. We all took the exam at 12 p.m. after getting an email an hour before the exam was being held, so I wouldn't have made it in time if I stayed at home. Worst part was, no one cared. Not the professor, the course lead, or the head of our school. They all just left 30 students in the lurch, allowing them to potentially fail the exam and therefore the module. I really thought universities were stricter on this kind of thing. I mean, I guess not, but that's some hot garbage to not know when the exam is until the day before, an hour before. Brilliant. Story 9. 2 words. Collective punishment. Teachers of Reddit, if you want your whole class to instantly hate you, this is how to do it. Another thing I remembered. We had to go to a nearby sports field for PE, which was about a 10-minute walk from the school. We only had a 5-minute gap between lessons. No matter how many times we explained we had PE, some teachers would always kick up a fuss if we were late to the lesson after PE. It also led to students missing the school bus if you had PE as the last lesson of the day. I'm pretty sure some parents complained because they started ending PE lessons 5 to 10 minutes earlier. Story 10. My high school got t-shirt uniforms when we got a new principal under the guise that we were too poor to afford our own clothes and it would keep intruders out, without even polling students. I was very vocal about being against them, but wore it anyway to avoid trouble. My reward was that if I wore a jacket, I was singled out by security and had to unzip it. Keep in mind, dozens of students wore hoodies and were not approached. Or I was told I looked unfamiliar and had to go to the office so they could verify my identity. It's a small town and everyone knew me since I was also in the student body government. I would pass by the principal in the hallway and he would pretend to not know me until I magically unzipped my jacket. But the cherry on top was when the office called every single teacher every day to check if I had the uniform on. The harassment became too much for me, and I withdrew from my senior year of high school before the first semester ended. Luckily, I was able to take 2 online classes at home to graduate. I couldn't think of a bigger distraction than making a huge fuss over uniforms or what a student is wearing. Story 11. Not a teacher, but the administration had all of us in middle school wear student IDs on a lanyard, color-coded by what hallway your classes were in every single day. Sparked massive actual protests from the students, because even though my town is pretty low on crime rates, that administration, middle school and above, essentially treated every kid like they were either already a criminal or had the strong potential to be. There were so many protests on the lanyard garbage that they stopped doing it after winter break, because it'd be bad publicity if they kept giving out detentions for insubordination the way they were. They also did things like assigned seating at lunch and forced the middle schoolers who wanted to see the high school football games to be fenced in so as to not cause trouble. Okay, the image of that last part is kind of funny though. A bunch of middle schoolers all in a kind of cage to watch a game. That it's not great, but it's funny. Story 12. I had one of those teachers that just put a bunch of activities on the board and browsed something on their laptops all lesson. Worst part, it was a maths teacher. The only thing she would do was maybe tell us to shut up once or twice, apart from one time. Possibly after one of us had had a word with someone about how little she did, she suddenly snapped and sent the entire class outside until we were ready to work. We all just laughed our butts off and browsed our phones. The ones who actually cared about algebra went back in, until the teacher decided to come check on us. She just stood there. We were all completely silent, until I decided to break the silence. Ahem. Nice of you to join us. Oh boy. Basically, after that, we compiled a doc of what she'd been doing, so we could have a talk with the dean or something about what had been going on. But not before someone accidentally shared it with the teacher. And so for the last term she was with us, she improvised. So yeah, that's my story. Story 17. In my second semester of my first year of law school, everyone in my class, 80 plus people, had to take a research class. This class was taught by 4 different law librarians, but followed the same syllabus. It was also worth 1 credit. These librarians ran the class as if it were 3 credits. We had to read, conduct legal research, and write 2 memos throughout the semester, when we had 5 other classes all within the 2 to 4 credit range. Plus one specific class was notoriously difficult. Anyway, halfway through the semester, my class gets upset at the workload to credit ratio, and someone starts a petition to reduce the number of assignments and or change the grading for the class from a letter grade to a pass-fail. Almost the entire class signs. There were a few holdouts. The student who started the petition delivers it to the librarians. The librarians remove 1 or 2 assignments but otherwise disregard the petition. Those who signed all awkwardly suffered through the rest of the semester. A valuable lesson in law. The popular vote does not always win. Story 14. One of our lecturers at uni once. Basically, he doesn't let any of us talk to him unless we make an appointment. Something that takes basically 2 minutes to answer. Nope, write an email and he'll get back to you. You stop him in the hallway to ask him a question. Nope, only through email and schedule times. Like, even if it literally takes less time to explain something to us than to say, I will only answer questions during scheduled meetings, so email me and we can arrange something, he will insist on scheduling you in and then locking himself in his office. That's one way to upset an entire year group of students. Story 15. make everyone come to college from 10 till 11:30 to hold presentations, be 45 minutes late, not tell students they aren't allowed to see each other's students' presentations and thus make them be at school at 10 without reason, somehow take up 3 times the amount of allocated time per presentation group, finish at 6 p.m. instead of 11:30, let most of these students fail or just barely pass. In that particular order. Story 16. Maths teacher, GCSE year. Teacher gave us a piece of coursework that we had a month to do. We weren't the brightest bunnies at math in that particular class, just under average. But somehow every single student in that class decided we were going to go above and beyond to try and up our grade. We collectively pulled together and worked our butts off. Some of us going without sleep at times so we could work on it and provide help to the others, myself included. When we handed in our coursework, there was a pretty good feeling in the class. We thought we had done well and were pleased with ourselves. When we got our papers back, we all got higher grades than usual, and in many cases did even better than we hoped, myself included. Then the teacher informed us that the coursework was mock and didn't count for anything. We now had to do the real coursework in the span of 2 weeks. There wasn't a riot. Everyone just went quiet. We were collectively stunned in disbelief. No one said anything at all. We simply couldn't believe it. Over the next 2 weeks, I was pretty much crying every night. I'd burned myself out over the mock and was just too tired. I'd also recently been diagnosed with CFS, which didn't help my concentration or mood at all. I wasn't the only one either. Everyone else was having issues, and all the camaraderie we had built up over the past month had dissolved. Handed in my coursework after the fortnight was up and went and cried in the girls' toilets because I knew it was awful, especially compared to the mock I had been so proud of. The results from that were nearly all below our usual grades. I just about scrapped my old average. Teacher then rubbed salt in the wound by saying she was disappointed in all of us. No one had the energy to argue, we just took it. I think one person tried to complain to the head teacher afterwards, but nothing came of it. For extra injury, that teacher had several maths classes, but we were the only one she pulled that stunt on. I think it should be straight up just against the rules to not tell students that something isn't worth a grade. I feel like mock assignments should be very clearly labeled as such. Otherwise, yeah, students are going to burn themselves out on it, and it took a month. That is a huge project. Massive L for the teacher here. Story 17. First day as a new teacher in our school. She came from a private school originally. She asked the class what a hyperbole was, and we were silent as we hadn't heard the term before. She rudely goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I was teaching a top-set English class." Everyone in the class unanimously agrees after the teacher leaves to go get photocopies to make that teacher's life a living hell. Some students piped up and said she was just as rude as that when she was talking to her tutor group. Cue the next few weeks of being angels with our original teacher and being the worst class ever with the rude one, plus complaining about the rude one to our original one and getting our parents to send in complaints about it. We had her fired by Christmas. Story 18. Oh, I've had so many. First teacher was new to the school and taught us science in year 10. She was always 20 minutes late. She was a fun teacher, but our lessons were only 40 minutes. So we'd literally waste half a lesson being late. Ticked me off to no end. Another teacher lost 2 years worth of my science coursework, which I had to redo by the end of the week. That was 3 days. I'm surprised I got the grade I did, and she didn't help. And finally, the doctor. This one makes me laugh. I don't know how the rest of you address your teachers, but here in England, it's common to call them Miss or Sir. Oh, but not the latest science teacher in year 10. No. You had to address her as Doctor, followed by her name, which was incredibly close to a well-known vegetable, which we took advantage of. And if you didn't, she wouldn't answer or even acknowledge you. She asked if she could hit us, asked our parents if she could smack us upside the head, belittled us because we were public school kids from rough areas. This was all within a week. Needless to say, we made her time there a living hell, and she ran out of the school crying, leaving all her belongings except her handbag by Tuesday the following week. We didn't see her again. Oh, and every substitute ever who thought they were God when they walked into the room. Story 19. Various teachers said that 1. Gay banging is equivalent to eating dirt. 2. Being gay is a choice. 3. People with specific disabilities shouldn't bang if they can't procreate. 4. If you're born with an extra appendage, that appendage is evil. 5. Dogs don't have feelings. Yeah, I went to Catholic school. Even the students that were Catholic thought those statements were outrageous. Okay, the first 3, from a Catholic perspective, I get it. That's kind of standard, super religious stuff. Evil extra appendages, oh, that's a new one. Dogs don't have feelings is just, hey, what? That teacher had to have been evil. I guess to them, dogs don't go to heaven. Story 20. The class was doing a project on criminal justice and held a mock trial. My friend got assigned to play the role of an intimate assault victim. In real life, she had been a victim of an assault that was very similar to that of the character. She felt it would be too emotionally draining and tried to get out of the part. The teacher wanted an explanation, but my friend kept saying it was very personal. This went back and forth a few times over the next 2 days, and it was just not clicking in the teacher's head. Finally, he lost his patience and yelled out, out, "You are holding up this whole project for everyone. Why the hell is this so difficult to you?" With the whole class paying attention, she admitted she had been intimately assaulted the same way this character had and went to go cry. They changed the topic of the project after that, but the class never really looked at the teacher the same way again. This is just a distinct lack of empathy and understanding from a teacher. That's just gross. Just as a human, not even as a teacher. I can only hope they learned from it at the very least, but ugh. Story 21. When I was a sophomore in high school, there was a shooting at an elementary school in my town, and we went into lockdown. My math teacher proceeded to hand out the test we were supposed to take that day and told us to have it done by the end of the lockdown. No matter how many students complained or tried to tell her what was going on at the elementary school, she remained adamant that it was just a drill, even when they started reporting death counts. None of us looked at her the same. Story 22. My AP US history teacher had us write 4-page double-spaced papers 4 nights out of the week based on the next day's lesson. If that wasn't bad enough, he gave minimal direction on what should be included in your response. "You'll be able to tell." Then graded them based on your previous papers. So he just gave you a score out of 10 on the top with no comments or marks. After not doing very well on my first 2 weeks of papers, like 6 or 7 out of 10, I asked some friends who did so well for help. But I always had to contest my scores because he was still giving me 6s and 7s. When I asked what was missing or how to improve, considering I was hitting all the same points as my friends, averaging 9s, and there were literally no other marks on the paper or a rubric, he'd have to sit on it and reread it, and I would usually end up with a 9. His bias was infuriating, and his lack of feedback was counterproductive. Story 23. Not my professor, but a friend of mine. His professor was going through some rough marital issues, and this started to reflect in his teaching, or lack thereof. He'd be late almost every day for the first half of the semester. Then there are days that he didn't show up to teach at all, and never bothered to inform the students. When he's able to inform the students of his absence, it's only a few minutes before class starts. Again, imagine this happening constantly for the first half of the semester or close to it. Soon word got back to the higher-ups and he was promptly fired. The only problem, he didn't know. He showed up to class. Imagine walking in 15 minutes late and seeing another professor standing there telling your students about what's going to happen with the remainder of the semester. Well, he stayed there for about 10 minutes before making a quiet exit. The new professor, from what I heard, got most of the animosity because the students didn't want to readjust in order to fit his design for the class. From what I've heard, it was pretty simple stuff. Forget the old syllabus and use his, which mentions doing some new simple assignments. Don't stress about the stuff you haven't done yet, and anything you've already done for the old professor will be counted towards your grade. Some students were still angered by this, but only one student got physically upset because he had done all of the assignments already. Just goes to show you can't please everyone. I do not envy that new prof. It is a very difficult thing to pick up a class in the middle of a term. And yes, you can't please everyone. So, last guy? Sucks to suck, but nothing that can be done, really. Unless you just want everyone else to be screwed over more. It's just a rough situation. Story 24. In high school, I had a teacher for pre-calc who we'll call Dr. B. She was the worst experience I've ever had with an educator, bar none. To this day, I still hate having taken that class. As a sophomore, I never actually had a teacher who was credentialed to the point of having a doctorate. The only doctors I really knew about were medical doctors. So when I started this class, I often called her Miss B instead of Dr. B. Every time I used the wrong title when trying to speak with her, she ignored me completely. And not just me, any student. As you can imagine, most kids had this problem initially. This led to an increasingly frustrating classroom environment, to the point where no one liked her and only spoke if they absolutely had to. I tried to get better at using the proper title, but I would occasionally make a mistake. Everyone hated dealing with her, and some kids would do it on purpose just to annoy her. One day I had to use the restroom and I raised my hand to get her attention. She didn't see me at first, so I called her name. Miss B, can I use the restroom? This woman looked me dead in the eye and then turned back to what she was doing, completely ignoring me. I was so goddamn angry I walked out and went to the restroom anyway. When I came back, she tried to write me up for leaving class. I just took the referral and tore it up, looking her dead in the eye. We had a bit of a standoff, you might say. A couple of my buddies were fighting to keep from laughing because I was never the rebellious type, so this was a treat for them. She let it go and I figured that was that. When I got home, my mother asked me what happened. It turns out she called my mom about my discipline problem and said that I would have to accept a referral the following day. I told my mom what happened and thankfully she understood. Most of my teachers loved me and I never had any problems, so this was not a normal situation. She said she would take care of it. The next day I get called down to the office after first period, and when I arrive, my mom is there with Dr. B, the principal, and a couple of other administrators. She then proceeds to go into crazy mom mode and basically tells them that any referrals written by this teacher would be ignored, and she would not force me into any kind of in-school or out-of-school detentions. It was one of my favorite favorite mom moments. All I could think was, hell yeah. Things got a little better in class after that, but I still hated her, and was happy when the year was over. Part of me wants to say, I get it, because you work hard for a doctorate and it's a title of respect in academia and you want to be referred to as such. That being said, these are children. They are not in academia. They don't know better. Correct them, but still acknowledge them. Don't be such a loser about it. Anyway, that's all the stories we have for today. I'm sure you all have some of your own, so throw them in the comments. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next one.